Hey Cajun, ever find yourself wrestling with those tiny little words in English that, despite their size, can completely flip the meaning of a sentence? Like the difference between saying, I have few friends and I have a few friends?
Oh my gosh, Monica, you hit the nail on the head. That particular pair, few and a few, is one of those linguistic landmines that so many people, including native speakers sometimes, just walk right over without realizing the emotional and practical weight they carry. It's wild, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I mean, you add one tiny little article, and suddenly what could sound like a lament about loneliness turns into a simple statement about having a manageable number of pals. The nuance is incredible, and honestly, it's a fantastic example of how subtle English can be.
Totally. And it's not just about friends, right? It applies to so many things. Like if you say, I have few options, that's a pretty grim situation. You're feeling restricted, like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. But I have a few options. That's like, okay, I've got some choices, maybe not a ton, but enough to work with. It's a completely different energy.
Exactly. It really boils down to a negative versus a positive or neutral connotation. Let's break it down for our listeners. When you use few without the you're generally emphasizing scarcity. You're saying not many or even hardly any. It often carries a sense of limitation, lack, or even disappointment.
Yeah, like few people truly understand the complexities of quantum physics. That's not saying zero, but it's definitely implying that the number is so small it's almost negligible. It's an exclusive club, you know? And if you're not in it, you're part of the many who don't get it.
Precisely. Or consider a situation like, we have few resources left to complete the project. That implies a critical shortage, a real struggle ahead. It's a warning, almost. The emphasis is on the lack, the inadequacy.
Right, and it paints a pretty bleak picture, doesn't it? It suggests a problem, a hurdle that might be difficult to overcome because of what you don't have. I remember once I told my roommate there are few snacks left in the pantry, and she just slumped. Her face just fell like, oh no, what are we going to do?
That's a perfect real-world example of how the emotional impact comes across. Now, let's flip that over to a few. When you add that you're shifting from scarcity to sufficiency, or at least a small but positive or neutral quantity. It means some, or a small number, but crucially, it's usually enough for the purpose, or it's not viewed as a problem.
Yes, like your roommate example. If you'd said there are a few snacks left in the pantry, she might have perked up thinking, okay, great. Enough for a quick munch, we'll just get more later. It doesn't imply a crisis. It's just a status update, not a warning.
Exactly. Think about it in terms of action. I have a few questions before we start. That's a reasonable, expected statement. You're not saying you have many questions, which might imply you're completely lost, but you have some specific points to clarify. It's constructive.
Or if someone asks you, do you have any experience with public speaking? And you reply, I have a few years of experience. That sounds confident, doesn't it? It means you're not a complete novice. You've got some background, some practice under your belt. Whereas I have few years of experience could make you sound hesitant or unqualified. The really makes a huge difference in perception.
That's a fantastic point about how it affects confidence and perception. It's not just about the raw number, but how you're framing that number. A few implies competence or at least capability, while few implies a deficiency.
It's almost like few is a glass half empty and a few is a glass half full, even if the actual amount of liquid is exactly the same. It's all about the perspective you're trying to convey. It's psychological almost.
That's a brilliant analogy, Cajun. Let's solidify this with some more diverse examples. Imagine you're at a concert. If you say there were few people at the concert, what does that tell you about the event?
Well, it tells me it was probably a flop, right? The band probably wasn't happy. The atmosphere was likely flat. It suggests disappointment, a lack of attendance. Almost like, why did they even bother?
Exactly. Now, what if you said there were a few people at the concert?
That's different. It still means it wasn't a massive crowd, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was a failure. Maybe it was a small, intimate gig, a private showing. It could be perfectly fine, even enjoyable. It's just a statement of quantity, not a judgment.
See how powerful that is? It takes it from a negative assessment to a neutral descriptive statement. Or take money, for example. I have few dollars left until payday sounds like real financial stress, right?
Oh, that's a familiar feeling for many of us. It screams, I need to budget very carefully, maybe even skip lunch. It's a statement of impending doom almost.
Precisely. But I have a few dollars left until payday could mean, okay, I'm cutting it close, but I can still grab a coffee and make it work. It implies a slight squeeze, but not a full-blown crisis. You still have some financial flexibility, however small.
Yeah, it's the difference between panic and careful planning. The makes you feel like you still have agency even with a small amount. This reminds me of when I was learning to bake. I needed few ingredients for a simple recipe. If I said few ingredients, it would mean I barely had anything and couldn't even start.
Right. You'd be looking at an empty pantry, wondering what you could possibly whip up. But if the recipe called for a few ingredients, that just means it's a simple recipe, not complex, and you probably have what you need.
Exactly. It signifies simplicity, not lack. The language here is so context dependent, but that tiny acts as a huge signpost for the listener about your overall sentiment. So, Monica, for someone who's just trying to get this straight, what's the simplest way to remember the core difference?
That's a great question, Cajun. I'd say think of few as meaning not enough or too little to matter. It's negative, whereas a few means some and crucially enough to matter or enough to be useful. It's positive or at least neutral. If you're focusing on the shortage, use few. If you're acknowledging a small quantity without judgment, use a few.
I love that. Not enough versus some, but enough. That's a really clear distinction. And I think it's important to remember that it's always used with countable nouns, right? We're not talking about little and a little here, which are for uncountable things like water or information.
Absolutely, that's a critical point. Few and a few are strictly for countable nouns, things you can quantify individually like book, people, mistakes, opportunities. You wouldn't say few water or a few information. That would be little water or a little information, which is a whole other topic for another day.
Good to clarify. It's easy to get those mixed up too. So let's play a little game here, Monica. I'll give you a sentence and you tell me which one fits best and why. How about this? I've read books on this subject, so I feel pretty confident discussing it.
Okay, I like this. For I've read books on this subject, so I feel pretty confident discussing it, I definitely go with a few. The so I feel pretty confident part signals that the number of books, even if small, was sufficient and contributed positively to your knowledge. If you said few books, it would contradict the confidence, wouldn't it?
Exactly. The few would make you sound like you're bluffing or you're barely prepared. All right, next one. After the company layoffs, there were employees left in the department and morale was extremely low.
Oh, that's a tough one, and it definitely needs few. The phrase morale was extremely low immediately tells you that the remaining number of employees is seen as a negative, a sign of depletion and hardship. If you said a few employees, it wouldn't convey that sense of impact and negativity as strongly.
Spot on. The emotional context there is a huge clue. One more. Could you give me minutes? I just need to finish this email.
That's a common one. You'd say a few minutes. You're asking for a small, reasonable amount of time, not implying that you have almost no time or that the request is problematic. It's a polite way of saying some time, which is perfectly acceptable.
Perfect. I think that really helps to solidify it. It's truly all about the underlying message and feeling you want to convey. So if you're ever in doubt, pause and ask yourself, am I trying to say not many and that's a problem, or some and that's okay enough?
That's excellent advice, Cajun. Practice makes perfect with these nuances. Try listening for them in conversations and actively think about which one you'd use when you speak or write. The more you pay attention, the more natural it will become.
Absolutely. It's like learning to distinguish between different shades of color. At first, they might look the same, but with practice, your eye gets trained to see the subtle differences that make all the impact. So, the next time you're about to use few or a few, give it that extra second of thought.
And remember, don't be discouraged if you mix them up occasionally. Even native speakers sometimes slip. The important thing is understanding the underlying principle. Once you grasp that, you're well on your way to mastering this really important distinction in English.
Couldn't agree more. It truly enriches your communication when you can wield these words with precision. Thanks for breaking this down with me, Monica. It's always a pleasure to unpack these linguistic puzzles.
My pleasure, Cajun. And to all our listeners, we hope this conversation gives you a clearer understanding of when to use few and when to use a few. Keep practicing, and you'll be sounding like a pro in no time. We'll catch you next time.